Building email templates for your apps is the worst, right? Whether it's confusing styling, awful table layouts, or even just trying to get one email client to render the way you're expecting. What if you could use React to make this process easier? Or even fun? In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a modern responsive email using the React email library. And we're going to send it with just a few lines of code. So let's get at it. All right, so let's dive in and look at how you would build an email using React Email. To start out, we're going to wrap the entire thing in the HTML tag from React Email components. This ensures that the email has all the necessary wrappings it needs when it gets sent. Let's also add a head. We're not going to add anything in there, so we'll self-close it for now. And then we're going to write in our body. We have this element called preview, which we can pull in as well. This adds text that the user won't see when they look at the actual email, but will be picked up by the email client so that you can set what the user sees in the preview before they even click into their email. In our case, let's create an example email for when a user receives a new comment. So I'll hit save here, and in the preview here, you'll see nothing was added to the actual display of the email, but this will be shown when we send the email. So let's start by wrapping the entire thing in a container component. This container component helps with responsiveness by centering our content horizontally with breaking points. Creating emails is always a challenge because email clients notoriously don't support certain aspects of HTML. There are a few patterns we'll follow to ensure that the content is shown properly in our email client. The first one is to always wrap in a container. The next is to use 3 components whenever we're putting content in our email. The first is section. This allows us to organize our content sections. And then we're going to use row to organize content within that, and columns. This will allow us to have multiple columns if we need, but even if we just have a single column, this is the best way to organize our content. HTML clients have issues with using class names, and so we're going to use style tags directly. There is an option to use Tailwind with React Email, but I'm not going to go through that in this tutorial. So let's use style tags to see what our different containers look like. For the body, we're just going to set a background color just so we can see where the body is. Next, let's go to the container and we'll set a background color on this one. And you'll see that there's nothing here. So let's add some content in here. We're just going to use the text component to be able to throw in some text. So there's where our container lives. One thing we'll want to do is make sure this container is centered in their email client. So we'll just quickly add margin 0 for top and bottom and auto for left and right. This is going to center our content nicely. All right, so let's take a look at this section. You'll see that the section takes over the container completely. Let's talk about our row. Same deal. And then let's do our column. If all 4 of these containers are taking up the same space, why do we need them? What these containers will help you do is organize your content and add margin so you can use spacing as a way to separate your content. Okay, so now that we've talked about the layout of this email, let's take off some of these terrible background colors and actually design a proper email. One thing I'll recommend is that on the body, we set a background color of white. The reason for this is that some email clients support dark mode, and you don't want to be designing for a white background and have their client put in a dark background over your content. That could lead to illegible text or images not looking the way you want. Let's remove the background colors. Okay, so let's say this email was meant for a Waffle House that has comments on its website. So what I'll do is I'll add an image of the logo. You might be thinking, that seems a bit large, and I'm going to agree with you. So we're going to throw our styling in. So what we'll do is we'll change the width to be 60 pixels, and so it keeps its aspect ratio. We'll set the height to be auto. Now overall for this email, I'm going to want a look where everything is centered. I'm going to come up to this column I've created, and I'm going to say align center. Maybe then I also want to add in a heading that has the name of the Waffle House. And just to tighten up this styling, I'll say the font size is 18 pixels and the font weight is bold. So I run this Waffle House and I'm going to get emails every time someone puts a new comment on one of my menu items. So I want this email to say hi to me and let me know why it's sending the email. So we're going to start a new section. with a new row and a new column. And I'm going to do a similar thing in here, set the alignment to center. And it's going to say, hey, Waffle House owner, you have a new comment from the Waffler 89. So now let's throw in the section where we show the comment. So I'm just going to throw in the text from the comment that was made. And so I'm going to want to do a couple things to this stylistically. First of all, I want to have a background color on this. And I want to have a border radius so that it's not just square edges. Now I'd like to add padding so that that text isn't touching the edges. And maybe I'll want to have more padding on the left and right than I do on the top and bottom. So maybe there's a call to action in this email where what I want them to do is I want them to respond to the person's comment. This is where I'm going to pull in the button component from React email components. And for right now, I'll just say respond to comment. Doesn't look like anything, but we're going to add the styling. Let's add a background color. Now we're going to want to do a couple other things in here to stylistically clean this up. Now we're going to want this button to have some spacing from the comment. So I'm just going to add a margin top. Let's add one more section for the footer. I'll first add a horizontal rule component to create this spacing. I'll add another margin top. And then because this is all the footer, I'm not going to create a new section, but I'll create a new row where I'm going to add in the contents for the footer. Now, I think it's important to take a minute here to look at the HTML that's being generated so that we can see what React email is doing under the hood. We're not going to go through all the details of this HTML, but I thought it was useful for you to see all of the different things that React email is doing under the hood to make sure this works with all sorts of email clients. All right, so let's talk about how we can take this email we've just created, clean it up a little bit, and make it useful for when we're going to send an email in our application. The first thing we can do is componentize a lot of this. So let's say we were going to be developing 5 different types of emails. Maybe there's a new comment email. Maybe there's an email that goes out to our customers to let them know we've got a new kind of waffle. Maybe there's an email that says, hey, we just sold 1 billion waffles. Your app is likely to have multiple emails that you need to send out. One of the beautiful things about using React for our emails is the ability to use React's composability and componentization to make creating our emails super simple and beautiful. So let's do a few of those things right now. First of all, let's take this footer, this entire section. I'm just going to cut it out of here. And at the top of our file here, I'm going to create a new component called footer. I'm going to grab this component and I'm going to place it in here. Our email looks the exact same, and now we have this footer component. Next, I'm going to take this section here, and in my mind, I'm thinking this could be a reusable component for when we have a call to action button that's centered on the screen. So let's pull this out of here, and we'll do the same thing. And then we'll place that call to action button back in the spot it was in. We'll leave the comment section alone and the text section alone. And what we'll do is we'll come up here and we'll grab this entire header and make it a component. And then we'll throw that header in here. Let's take this one step further. I have all of this code that will likely just be the container wrapping around my email. And so let's say we have a component here called email template. And we're going to have children on this email template. Let's properly type this, and we'll take this content, including that container, put it in here. And now we can wrap this entire email in this email template component. This component's looking really nice and clean now, but it's still not really dynamic. So what can we do here? We're going to pass some arguments in here to make it dynamic. Let's create a type called email props. And we're going to need a few things. Preview text, and some details about the comment. So let's make these props that we'll pass in to this component. To make this email template dynamic, it should also have some preview text. So we're going to take this and we're going to swap it out so it's dynamic. This email template will now take the preview text. Now I'll need to add these new props to where I'm actually calling that component. So now we're passing this in, and I can come back to my email component and put these dynamic elements in. So now I have this dynamic email that I can use anytime there's a new comment added. And if I go to where I'm using this component, I can change things like the username, and that'll automatically update my email. I could go further and I could make other components to abstract away some of this section, row, and column detail. But we'll stop here because I think this shows the power of composability and using React to create emails. Let's talk about how to send emails. So we're going to create an API endpoint where this email will get sent. The first thing you need to make sure is that this file name uses .tsx or .jsx so that it's rendered properly as React code. So we're going to import this render component. Make sure to install React Email Render. Then we'll import our email. We're going to ensure that this is an async function, and we're going to create this variable called HTML to hold the HTML that comes back. We're going to say await, render, and then pass in our component. We have to pass in our preview text and our comment. In a real life situation, this would be coming from the database or something like that, but we're just going to hard code it. So now we have this string, which is just the HTML, and then we can use whatever provider we want to send the email using that HTML. Super simple. If we wanted to use SendGrid or one of the other integrations, we could install the SendGrid package and pull it in. It's as simple as setting the API key, setting the options for the email, and then sending the email. That's it. You've now sent your email. It's fully dynamic, it's fully in code, and you're off to the races. One last thing I want to show you here, on the React email site, under the documentation, there's a templates section. If we click on this, you'll be able to see a ton of examples where you can go through and see what other emails could look like and what the code looks like for those emails. This is very helpful and can give you inspiration on your next idea. I'm hoping that intro to the React email library is going to make it less daunting the next time you have to create emails for your next app. If you're loving this content, I'd love for you to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.